if you don't know, is the term for non-believer. The report describes red rooms, rooms made for torture, for filming. They were passed between men like property. These are babies, ladies and gentlemen. These are little girls who we're not supposed to talk about because they're white. I have a huge problem with that. And there's so many people who consider themselves lefties and progressives who can't even talk about this shit, even though they know how horrifying it is, but they can't talk about it because they'll be kicked out of their little fucking cult. This is testimony. This is real. This happened. This is happening. And we know it's happening because the report includes real stories. This girl's name or pseudonym was Chloe. She was 11 years old and she had a rough start to life. Her dad died when she was 10 and her mum's new partner was abusive. She was vulnerable and the gangs knew that on the spot. They target people like this from broken homes. Men who were described mainly as Pakistani Muslims, many of them apparently allegedly taxi drivers, began giving her attention in the town centre, drinks and cigarettes, and treating her like she was an adult, trying to swoon her, or what most of us would call grooming. And then by the time that she's 12, she's being passed around by these groups of men. She's then, she's then travelled around the country. On one occasion, a man inserted a whiskey bottle, into her and it shattered. And she had to take herself to the emergency room. She was examined, glass removed, and then she was discharged. And apparently no questions were asked. It wasn't followed up upon. How? She's 12. Police also apparently found Chloe in these cars with these gang members. Happened multiple times. And then they allegedly let the men go without any questioning. This is how this abuse continues. Abuse continues. Horrible things continue when good people do nothing. That is why this has gone on for so bloody long. Fuck. She was then diagnosed with chlamydia in her throat and her vagina, gonorrhea, genital warts, and pelvic inflammatory disease. And no one reported it from the sexual health clinic. There's another girl called Fiona. And I know this is horrible, but this is important. She was placed in a children's home that had already been identified as high risk for sexual exploitation. Staff were aware that abusers sat in cars outside the home. Oh my God, abusers would phone the home to inquire about the girls. What? One childcare worker was warned that recording car registrations plates were, quote, above her pay grade, end quote, and would lose her job if she did so. This is why whistleblowers are so important. Between the ages of 13 and 17, Fiona Rames estimates she was abused by 50 and 100 men. Of those, only 2, she estimates, were not Pakistani. On one occasion, a police officer returning Fiona to a house where abuse was occurring told the men to, quote, have fun with her. Jesus. Then there was Michelle. There are dozens of these, by the way. She became pregnant 4 times as a child as a result of rape. There was miscarriages, 1 abortion, and 1 surviving child. She estimates that she was raped by 600 and 700 different men over 3 years. Of her abusers, she states that, quote, 98% of them were Pakistani Muslim. If not, they were Iraqi Muslim or Kurdish, end quote. She describes the network as, quote, industrial, end quote, in scale. A large central network with smaller connected groups. This is trafficking. This is what we're talking about. This is just crazy. How does this happen in a Western world? How is this allowed? In a world where we are so on the pulse with so many different things, this goes on for years and no one does anything. And then if anyone says anything, they're shouted down as racist or horrible. The art rhymes with the artsy word. This is what happens when you don't allow people to tell the truth, or at least you brainwash an entire generation or a few generations of people into thinking that they can't be truthful with what they actually believe or what they see because everyone's too afraid of what they might be interpreted as. Just because someone is a Muslim, it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. Absolutely. But also it doesn't mean that you can't tell that person that they're doing the wrong thing or you can't speak about it. That's crazy. Now, I want to be very careful with this next section of this video because it's dangerous. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'm just going to give you the findings from the inquiry, from the report. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. We go to page 9 of the report, and I'm quoting again from the executive summary. Quote, political failure lies at the heart of this scandal. Successive governments, this is governments from all over the spectrum, the political spectrum, by the way. Successive governments lacked the will to confront the ethnic and religious patterns. The Labor Party bears particular responsibility. It initially refused a public inquiry. Remember when they voted against that? That is absolutely crazy. And only relented under pressure. Labor-dominated councils and MPs were briefed on the gangs long ago, yet denied knowledge. The party prioritised the votes that they were going to get from Muslim voting blocks and then blocked or watered down inquiries, suppressed ethnic data and framed legitimate concerns as, quote, far-right agitation, end quote. That's the report. That's what the report says, not me. That government inquiry that I mentioned throughout that piece was actually voted down in January 2025 by 364 votes to 111. Of 500 members of parliament, only 111 voted to have an inquiry into these grooming gangs. They were all that scared of being called racist. Only 111. That is so weak. That is so disgusting. I am just, and like I know what a lot of people might be saying to this video, and I hear that this runs deeper, right? This is so deep throughout the status quo, and you talk about Epstein and you talk about all these things. Like I hear, like this shit's just vile and it's everywhere. But this is what we're focusing on right now. You can talk about all the other problems, and we should talk about all the other problems, but fuck me. And I tell you what, this is a problem everywhere because there are men of certain religions all over the world or different places all over the world. It doesn't have to just be religion. It's where you grow up. It's culture. They think it's okay to do shit like this. In 2002, right here in Australia, 9 Lebanese Muslim men were convicted in Australia of gang rape against some white girls. And one of these perpetrators sent a message that actually the report uses, this entire report we're speaking about, says, quote, when you're feeling down, bash a Christian or a Catholic and lift up, end quote. These are people who believe this shit. They live and breathe this shit. And because we don't give a fuck who comes into our country, of Australia, of the UK, of Britain, of Ireland, of Scotland, we don't care who comes in, throughout Europe, we don't give a shit. These people are everywhere. And it makes all of the good Muslims look like horrible people as well. And if you are a Muslim in this country and you're watching this and you're thinking Butterfield's hammering us, no, not at all. But you should be hammering these fucks. I'm not going to tell you what to think from this video. I just want you to look at it and understand that this is a giant problem. 250,000 girls had to go through this, and yet everyone was told that it was not true, it was not real, that you're a racist if you even question it, if you think about it, if you consider it a problem. You are a bad person. You're the problem, not the people who are committing these crimes against these young girls, but you. 219 pages of the most horrific shit of all time, attacking the British government, the British police force, everyone, attacking all of these people who are supposed to keep you safe, us safe, girls safe, babies safe. 219 pages, destroying them. There should be an absolute washout of all of the people in charge of the government in Britain right now, because they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. They are not looking after the people. They're not at all. I'm not trying to recruit anyone to take any side here. I'm just outlaying the facts, the alleged facts, I guess, if you want to call it that. Why hasn't this been spoken about in mainstream news in Australia, in America, in New Zealand, in South Africa? Why? Why are there no other influencers who care about shit talking about this? Where the fuck are all those fucking painful fucks who all they talk about is wars in countries that no one cares about? I'm sorry, you never gave a shit up until fucking 5 minutes ago. Why do you care now? Why aren't you talking about this? Because you're scared. You weak. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the video.